Hello, my name is Ray Lopez. I am your City Council representative for District 6. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the program Lopez Live. Today, I'm excited to have as my guest Maria Villagomez, the Budget Director for the City of San Antonio. Also with us is Juan Ayala, the National Night Out Coordinator, Dora Ayala, the National Night Out Administrator, and Officer Ray Todd. On today's show, we'll discuss the city's budget. Now I'd like to welcome to the show my very first guest, Maria Villagomez. Maria, welcome.
Thank you, Councilman, for having me here today.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about all the things that are happening, especially as they affect District 6. But I think what we want to talk a little bit about today is start kind of at the high level, at the city level, because I think that's what the public is interested in. Kind of, where are we? What are we doing? What's going to happen? I know that just recently your department and the manager presented the budget to the City Council. Tell us a little bit about that, the totals and what the process is going forward.
Sure. So the city manager presented the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2015 that will begin October 1. This was presented to the council on August the 7th, and the total city budget that is proposed for next year is $2.4 billion. The largest operating fund within the city's budget is the general fund, that this year will be over $1 billion. And the general fund is the fund that most people are familiar with. Most of our city services are funded through this fund, like streets, public safety, our police and fire, animal care, code enforcement, the libraries, the health department, and those basic core services of the city. We also have another group of funds that we call restricted funds, and that budget is roughly about $700 million combined, and that includes those funds that are restricted either by federal law, state law, or city ordinances. Good example is our solid waste fee, and that is the fund that collects the monthly fee that is paid by our residents so we can collect their trash. Also, our hotel occupancy tax is another restricted fund, and those restricted funds cannot be used to pay for the basic city services that are included in the general fund. So that's why they're restricted. And then finally, we have our capital budget that this year is close to $600 million. And the capital budget pays for those projects that are long-term investments of infrastructure such as streets and libraries and fire stations and drainage improvements. So that is the budget that was proposed to the City Council on August the 7th.
August the 7th, yeah, it was a big day. And I think when people see a $2.4 billion number, they go, wow, that's a huge number. And it is, indeed it is. But typically, those are the kinds of numbers that we look at, especially in a city like San Antonio, the 7th largest city in the country, a lot of activity going on in our city. But I think a lot of the things that people focus on is, so where are the dollars coming from to help me and my community, right? Street maintenance, things of that nature. So that is in, I think if I heard you correctly and understood all that after 5 years of listening to you, that's within the general fund.
Yes.
And that's kind of the checkbook we write that kind of expense off to. And the other ones are really more dedicated, or as some people might say, expenses with strings attached, because they have to go somewhere.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about the ones that in the general fund, because I think that that's probably where the biggest day-to-day impact is. And certainly as a council member, that's probably where we have the most direct influence on to support some of the programs. You talked about some of the programs in some of the different budgets. Talk a little bit about how all that goes through the the whole budgeting process and ultimately to approval in September.
Sure. And I'm glad you asked about the process. The City of San Antonio, we have a very transparent process when it comes to putting together the budget. Before the budget is actually developed, we have community meetings across the city, and we ask our residents, what are your priorities for the upcoming fiscal year? So earlier this year in May, we held 5 citywide community meetings, and we asked the public, what are your priorities? And what we heard across the city was streets and drainage. So the proposed budget includes $22 million for new funding that is being added for streets and drainage, $15 million for streets, and close to $7 million for drainage. So that is in addition to the $52 million that we already have in our what we call our base budget for our infrastructure management program. Some residents are familiar with what we call the 5-year IMP. So again, this reflects, the budget reflects the priorities of the community. In addition with meeting with our residents, we also have what we call a city council goal setting session. And we ask the council what are the priorities for the budget. And what we did that session back in May as well. And what we heard from the council, there were different goals that they had for the budget. Streets and drainage was one of those goals. They also talked about having more balance in our general fund. As you probably know, public safety consumes about 2/3 of our general fund budget, and 1/3 is dedicated to other important services like streets and parks and libraries. So council said direction they gave us, we want to maintain affordable public safety. Public safety is very important, but we need to make sure it's affordable. So the budget reflects that. We are maintaining our public safety at 66%, and we're able to add resources to streets and libraries and parks that are included in the budget. So the budget reflects the priorities of the community, the policy direction from the council as well. And now that we have proposed a budget, we still have about close to 40 days between budget proposal and budget adoption. So there's more opportunities for the community to participate and give us input on the budget.
Yeah, that process is very intense, but I think the public sometimes doesn't see, what goes on in the background, so to speak. Because I remember in May we first had the presentation, and there was a significant deficit. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, I think $27 million deficit that was being projected at the time. Then you took all of that. Explain to us how we get from the initial rollout, there's a deficit, we kind of go through all the gyrations that we go through, budget setting, input from the public, and then ultimately wind up with what we have to have is a balanced budget. Talk us through that little process.
Sure. So one of the first steps in the budget process is to develop a 5-year financial forecast. And this tool is to provide the community and the city council with an idea, where are we financially as a city organization, revenues versus expenses. So in May, we presented to the council our 5-year financial forecast. And this forecast is done based on a set of assumptions, historical trends, and what we know as of the time that this is prepared. So based on those assumptions, we estimated a $27 million financial challenge in our general fund. And as we went through the process of getting input from the community and the city council, the way that we were able to close the gap was by maintaining balance in the general fund between, as I mentioned earlier, public safety and non-public safety programs within the general fund. We also realized slightly more revenue than what we had anticipated when we developed the forecast in May. Our property tax values citywide have increased, which is a good sign that the economy is recovering. Our sales tax is also performing better, so that's another good sign that our economy is doing better. We may not be doing as good as other Texas cities like Austin and Dallas, but we're definitely recovering from the recession. So that's another factor that we were able to incorporate into balancing the budget. And then we also, within the manager's proposed budget, there's a recommendation to align the health care of police and fire uniformed personnel closer to our civilians, and it's still better than the benefits that are provided in other Texas cities. So those three factors combined allow us to present a proposed budget to the city council. But as you mentioned, this is not the end. This is the beginning of getting the input from the community on the proposed budget. We have additional community meetings. We'll have those in the month of August. We go out to the community and get input. We also have 2 public hearings at City Council chambers. There's one in August and one in September. And the council also, they review the budget in detail. There's about 10 work sessions Tuesdays and Wednesdays that are open to the public if they're interested in any specific topic. And we present the budget in detail to the City Council. So after they go through that process, ask questions, perhaps recommend changes, we are scheduled to adopt the budget on September 18.
We're looking forward to that. The process between here and September the 18th will be an intense one, no doubt, with a lot of input from a lot of different people. And I remember when we were talking about this in May, we talk about the expenses and the revenues and all that kind of stuff. The topic of a tax increase came up. And of course, again, we generally adopted not to move forward with the tax increase again this year. Talk a little bit about our historical tax base and how long it's been since we had a tax increase, and what would a tax increase look like if we were to have to implement one?
Sure. So, well, to answer one of the questions, our property tax rate, the city's property tax rate, has not increased in 22 years. So we have been able to maintain the same rate, and as a matter of fact, we have decreased it. I can tell you since 2006, 3 times we decreased the property tax rate. So one of the policy directions that we received from the council back in May was the majority of the council said we would like to maintain the city's current property tax rate. We don't want to see increases. So that's why the proposed budget does not recommend an increase to the property tax rate. Just to give you an idea, if we were to increase the city's property tax rate by 1 cent, today is about 56 cents, that generates about $7.5 million in additional revenue. The impact to the average homestead, and the average homestead being about $134,000, is about $14 annually. So that's just to give you some idea of what an impact would have if we were to do that. But again, the proposed budget does not recommend a city.
Well, and I think that's
increase.
important for people to understand. We do consider it, we have considered it over the course of the last few years and found other ways through efficiencies, through a lot of different other techniques that you and your office, in collaboration with the city manager, figure out the best way forward for the city. We've not had to have a tax increase in quite some time. And if I remember correctly, when we as citizens go out there and write that check once a year, or it gets taken out of our mortgage, or however that works out, really the total amount that gets pulled out of the portion of that goes to the city is really only about a quarter of that, isn't it?
Correct.
So
Yes.
the vast majority of the impact on the public is really different entities, whether it's the school districts or the universities or the hospital districts, and many of the other taxing entities, of which we only have unfortunately a quarter of that, but you guys have done a great job in doing that. Thank you so much to you and your team for that again this year.
Thank you.
So stay with us, and we'll be back after this short break and talk about the National Night Out program that's here in San Antonio and very well received.
Hey, San Antonio, we've just made recycling even easier. You can now recycle your plastic bags in the blue cart. That's right, from home, in your blue cart. Easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Remove all paper and receipts from the bags and make sure they're clean and dry. 2. Stuff all your bags into one, like a big soccer ball, and tie the handles tight. Oh, and be sure not to include any black bags. 3. Toss the bundle into your blue cart. That's it. 1, 2, 3. And you're now recycling plastic bags. Cool, huh?
Welcome back to our program. I'm your host, District 6 Councilman Ray Lopez. We're going to talk with Juan Ayala, National Night Out Coordinator, Officer Ray Todd, and Dora Ayala, who is the National Night Out Administrator. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
How are y'all doing?
Pretty good.
I bet you're pretty excited about what's coming up here in the next couple of months with our National Night Out program.
Oh, yes, sir. It's always a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's also accomplishing so much in our community. You know, I get an opportunity, as you do, to talk to a lot of HOA members, a lot of community members, and what we find every single time that HOAs have an increase in their National Night Out participation, crime goes down in each one of those communities. So there's a very direct cause and effect of what National Night Out and what you're doing with the program. So it's an incredible opportunity for us, not only to get together and have the we're known well for here in San Antonio, have the good pachanga and have a good party, but it really serves an incredible purpose. And moving it from August to October has always also helped just a little bit with our incredible heat in August. We've gotten a lot more participation and the like. But let me ask you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the history of the program, how it got started, and where you maybe even looking in your crystal ball, where you think it may be going into the future and that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. Well, the National Night Out program is part of what they call the National Association of Town Watch. And it was established back in 1983 by a person by the name of Matt Paskin, who's the executive director. And the program's designed to fight crime, also drugs. And it's been there since a long time ago. And it's headed in the direction of where, you know, it's going to make a big difference. As we get older, the younger generation comes along and they take the lead. And of course, this is one of the things that educates the kids of today is to become leaders of tomorrow. And I think we're going to see a lot of good things come about because of the program.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And you guys are doing a fantastic job with the increasing number of HOAs, the increasing number of participants even. Has become really a bigger and bigger challenge for you, so you're doing a great job with that.
Thank you.
Now, Dora, you are a coordinator, National Night Out coordinator. Tell me a little bit about what you do as a coordinator and what really the importance is, because I think one of the things that you do is get registration from HOAs and the like, and how important is that?
It's very important for everybody to register. I do the administrative part, putting together a spreadsheet. When they register, they're giving a confirmation number, which is good for communication, keeping track of our communication with the HOAs, the POAs, the churches, the schools, and so on. We give them a category. We have several categories, and we could talk about that in a little bit. But the importance is keeping track, keeping our councilmen abreast of who registered and who's in their area. Sometimes an HOA or a neighborhood association is functioning and they're not, the councilman's not quite aware, and this makes them aware both ways who their councilman is. Sometimes they get together and work on their neighborhood and they're not even sure of their district, so we make them aware of their district number and their councilman and direct them to the council meetings and stuff.
That's right, and also providing them the information, because I know we get the calls all the time saying, well, we were told by the coordinator's office, that you guys can provide us support in this area or the other. I know in District 6, and I'm assuming most of the districts are like this, we provide water, resources, try to hook them up with other agencies that can go out there and deliver information and support services for the community. I mean, it works out really, really well. And the HOAs that have been around for a while recognize that, and boy, they sure do lean on us to get that for them. But it's good because it continues to get the involvement of the business community, the neighborhood community, and then the general households.
Correct.
Getting out, right? That's what it's all about, getting the neighborhoods out, getting them to talk to each other, and more importantly, getting them to know not only each other, but also their police officers.
Right.
You know, I know that Officer Todd's been involved in this program for quite some time.
Yes, sir.
And I'd call you by your first name, but I can't even remember your first name all the time. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. It's Ray, isn't it?
Very
That's a
good.
great name. I'm very
good.
very partial to that name.
I've had that all my life.
So have I. We could talk about that in a different segment, yeah. But tell us a little bit about what the program does, how it, even affects the relationship between the HOAs and the officers, and any of the attributes or maybe some things that you'd like to see improved in the area.
Councilman, in my 30 years of experience in law enforcement, it's very easy once you spend 5, 6, 7, 8 years out there on patrol. You basically deal with the bad element most of the time. You're working for everyone, but you deal with the bad element. Sometimes after 5 or 6 years, you get to wondering, where are all the good people? Where are they at? I assure you they are still in the majority, and it's those folks that get themselves involved in community policing. I've been involved with the volunteer unit and community policing for about 8.5 years now, and I have a passion for it. When I have a chance to talk to these folks, and explain to them that we cannot do it without their eyes and ears out in the community. And it's just extremely important that our officers understand, as our command staff does, that they are extremely important in helping us do our job and fight crime in the streets in the city of San Antonio.
Well, that's a great observation. On the majority of the time that you engage with the public, it's in a less than positive environment. Fortunately, I haven't had that experience with you very often. You haven't pulled me over for any tickets, nor have I had to call you to my house for break-ins and the like. But in many cases, that's the relationship that you have with the public. So it's good to have these other opportunities where you get that opportunity to communicate and let them realize that you also are members of this community. You also have an interest in what's going on because it's really, it's really our community in total. So thank you for what you've done. You've made a tremendous impact in the short 8 years that you've been there. It seems like it just went by that quick, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, but thank you very much for what you've done there. I know that there's also rankings that happen, right? All the different HOAs, I know, especially after the first year or two, that they kind of get their wherewithal on how this works. They all want to compete. The HOAs want to compete and perform and get their awards and their banners and all that. Talk a little bit about the competition where San Antonio, even as a city, ranks nationally and the like, because I know that that's a very big source of pride for you guys.
Right, yes, sir, of course. And the pride goes back to San Antonio and Bexar County. They do an absolutely wonderful job each and every year. Back in 1983, when the program first started, there was about 400 communities altogether in 23 states that participated. Today, last year, we had over 16,000 communities participating in 50 states. So that's a big difference. San Antonio's always ranked really well, between 1 and 3rd place. Last year, San Antonio was recognized as first place winners. Last year, we had about 1/3 of the population in San Antonio, about 300,000 people participated. So that's a large number of people who are doing that. The word's getting out every day, doors busier and busier. We're getting our volunteers into the office who make a lot of phone calls. We send out a lot of emails. And the thing that we do at the end of the year is we recognize our citizens by having an award ceremony, and it's usually held about the first week in December.
Yeah, I know I get a chance to go to that.
Yes, sir.
I can tell you they all competed for the recognition, and they also compete for the seating arrangements
Yes.
and where they're going to sit and making sure that they're going to get in front of that camera to get the recognition and that they well deserve. But talk a little bit about what are the categories that they compete in and that kind of stuff.
We have 11 categories that we have where they compete. We have Saha, we have the apartments, the senior citizens, the schools, the churches, the colleges, as well as the elementary, middle, and high schoolers. We have the cities within our area, such as Cibolo and Live Oak, and they also participate. They compete against each other. We have the military installations that are here in San Antonio also do a wonderful job, and they hold their events on their bases. So they do that. I've seen everything in the competition from 4 to 5 pictures to 4 to 5 albums of pictures of their event. They put in maybe a poster board with the different participants that did an activity at their events. They have demonstrations. They have full buildings. we have things that they really want to show what they did at their event and what the impact it had on the children. We have participants that have contests within their things where the children participate in drug and crime fighting. We had one where they did T-shirts with suck it to drugs, and they had the children put together T-shirts, and they've had with lights, and you can do as many things and as big as you want to do it. You have to remember that we have to carry it from here to there, but yes, it's important that they participate and that they put in their entry, and the sooner that they do that, the better.
And then in December, the recognition and the
Right. Yeah.
gets recognized
They-
at the I think it was at UTSA last year. I
Correct,
believe,
yes, they have
the
their,
last few
their
years.
event. And they when they turn in their entry, they are able to put their category. Like for example, we have senior apartment complexes. Well, sometimes they want to compete in the senior category, sometimes they want to compete in the apartment category. So they will tell me, where they want to compete.
All of that is incredibly important because it adds to that whole morale of the community. And that's important. That's critically important. As a matter of fact, some would argue that that's probably the most important piece of it. But there is another piece of it that's pretty important. And that's how we go about doing our safety and our policing in our neighborhoods, the community policing and the like. I'll talk a little bit about that piece of it, the ability to kind of build that network with the National Night Out organizations, the HOAs. How does that impact the policing that we have to do in our communities?
Like I said in the beginning, is it's all about community policing. I know when I first got involved in National Night Out, we have large scale parties, we have block parties. And I remember one year on an occasion that I was assigned to one of the deputy chiefs as his driver, and we made some of the block parties where you would actually take a 200 block of a street here in San Antonio, and each driveway had the homeowner out there with their specialty, whether it be lemonade, whether it be their specialty in a recipe or whatever. I particularly like that part of National Night Out because the neighbors need to get out. For one, learn who your neighbor is. Two, learn who the children are that are in that neighborhood. Three, learn what kind of vehicles move up and down your street, and always be on the watch for suspicious activity. And if you see that, by all means, get in touch with us and we'll come out and help any way that we can. But always watch your own neighborhood.
Well, thanks for that kind of a commentary and advice to the listeners and to the people that are watching out there, because I know that we're doing that not only during National Night Out and this time of year in the October timeframe, but really throughout the entire year, reaching out to the community. If you can, let me kind of put you on the spot a little bit, talk a little bit about outside of National Night Out. I know that we have safe officer programs, we have cellularly on patrol and all those. I mean, how easy is it for folks to get involved in that kind of stuff?
It's extremely easy. The homeowners organization, the COP or Citizens on Patrol, that's a private entity. They have a president of the group, and it involves their association out there. In the volunteer policing program, they can get themselves involved directly with helping their police department do an array of different duties that would actually releases our patrolmen to go out and fight crime, if you will. And they, as far as National Night Out goes, it's great for our patrolmen to see those folks out there. It helps our morale because we're sitting there thinking, well, these folks really care about their neighborhoods.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted you to point out, that it's really is about the neighborhoods, and it's that full thing that we do year-round. So maybe in another segment what we'll do is do a little bit deeper dive into that, because I think that, again, outside of National Night Out, there's things that happen all year long. So I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for tuning in. I'd like to once again thank my guests for taking the time to provide us with such great information about the city's budget and the National Night Out program. I look forward to our upcoming shows, and until then, I'm your City Councilman Ray Lopez. Thank you, San Antonio.
Respondí a un choque en la carretera. Cuando llegué miré una mujer en el lado del pasajero y parecía que estaba dormida. En realidad estaba muerta y no tenía cinturón de seguridad. Siento que es una lástima que una muchacha tan joven hubiera muerto. Eso me motiva de aplicar las leyes sobre el cinturón de seguridad. El cinturón de seguridad sí salva vidas. Ella no tuvo por qué haber muerto.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Buzzed, busted, and broke, because buzz driving is drunk driving.